Security guard must be sleeping. He said there was nobody up here.
Recording in
Yeah.
progress.
I said, come on, there's 2 minutes. There's got to be someone up there. He's like, nope, nobody's here yet.
Recording in progress.
Come on.
He's one of our best.
That clock is a bit fast. Like 1 minute past.
6:59. I'm shocked at the postponement.
No, you're not. You anticipated that.
I'm just glad I spoke up when I did.
Can we start yet,
Turned
Tom?
out to be true. Yes, you can start now. You may start now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the December 4th meeting of the Town of Southampton Conservation Board. In accordance with the Town Board's adoption of Local Law Number 14 of 2022, the board's meetings are being held both in person at Town Hall and via video conference through Zoom webinar. A link to participate in this meeting via video conference can be found on the town's website at the town clerk's agendas and meetings portal. You can also watch the live stream video and submit written comments for the public record through the town website. If you are attending via Zoom and wish to speak during this meeting, then please click the raise hand icon. As a reminder to all applicants, agents, and members of the public who wish to speak at the meeting, please state your name and hamlet of residence for the record. Thank you. I invite everyone to rise for the salute to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We probably still can't vote on minutes.
Let's see.
Well, who was there November 6th besides you and I?
George, me, you, and
Hello,
Zed.
how are you?
So we can vote on November 6th?
You look a little
Or we
different.
can vote on the 20th because everybody was here then. Okay, good.
Sorry, it's not Kelly, but it's the best we can come up with.
Hey, nothing but the best for us.
If not that, then me.
I've never been to this kind of meeting before, but try to sit down.
Yeah,
Have a seat. You have choices tonight. This is the Conservation Board.
Yes. I don't, yeah. Thank you.
Take your time.
Like that windswept look.
There's plenty of wind. My,
Is that on the tractor this afternoon?
no, it's supposed to get windier.
Yeah, oh yeah, and wet.
Yeah,
50,
Well,
60 mile per
we
hour.
should be home by then. What is your pleasure on the minutes of November 6th, 2024 and November 20th, 2024?
I think.
We got to do
we
them
have to
separately.
Separately,
We do
and I
it.
wasn't here November 20th, so I have
You
to
were,
abstain.
who else? Let's see.
I was not here on the 20th. I think we could only do the 6th.
Okay, what is your pleasure on the minutes of November 6th?
Move the minutes be accepted as presented.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll wait on the other one, the November 20th. I'm expecting
Jerry said he was coming, so we can do it then.
public hearings, WB 24001, Farron Farvid, and the applicant requests adjournment to February 12th, 2025. Is there anyone in the
Is
public
a biggie.
that would like to speak on this application, or is there anyone online? There being none, is there a motion to adjourn to February 12th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? A 021093 134 Sand Dune SA 142 Sand Dune SA 134 Sand Dune SA.
And 152.
Uh,
Right?
Do we have affidavits?
Yes. Yeah, this hearing was opened and adjourned.
Oh, okay, okay. Would you like to present your application?
you have anything new to hand out tonight?
Karina is stamping them in. It's nothing new. It's everything that's on the record.
And just for the record, this is an application within the incorporated village of Sagaponic.
Oh, you ready? Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll
Unless we
just give
need,
her. You don't really need them for me to get started, but it's just something for you to have. Everything's up here on the board. So to start, I'm Brant Reiner from Nelson Pope and Voorhees here on behalf of the applicant. This is an application that has been pending for some time. As you might have seen in the record, there's been a staff report issued, and we have responded to that staff report to try to address the standards of the village code as best as we can.
Thank you.
In summary, this is an application to merge 3 lots, 2 of which are developed with single-family residential uses. There is a 2-story dwelling on one property, a 3-story dwelling on another property.
I got mine this morning. Sorry.
So that's okay. Just want to make sure you're all in order. So again, it's a merger of 3 properties, 2 of which are currently developed, all of which front on the Atlantic Ocean. We are subject to several different village code regulations. The project, as you see before you today, has been redesigned to meet all of the zoning standards and try as best we can to satisfy the standards of the village wetland and coastal erosion setback requirements. So I did intend on walking you through all of the coverage and setbacks. As you see on the very first page of my handout, there is a chart that does go through that. But before I get started, I do want to just make it clear that we are intending to merge these lots and strip away development rights for what we currently have as 2 single-family residential uses. We're reducing the 2 uses to 1 single-family residential use to create this one house for my client to utilize for him and his family. The idea is that the house would be 1 story for visual impacts so that the dune is sort of settled, the house is settled into the dune rather than sticking atop of it as a large 2-story house would, looking somewhat out of place. Due to the FEMA standards, this house will be setting up high in the air on pilings to allow for floodwaters to move through the property if in an event of a flood storm that would need to happen to comply with flood damage prevention regulation standards. So again, we're reducing density on the property. We're making all of the site conditions better from a wetland setback, lot coverage, dune setback perspective, and I can quickly walk you through those setback and coverage calculations as you see on this table before you. So currently, the house that is closest to the wetlands, so again, backing up real quick, we've got 3 adjacent lots sitting on Sand Dune Court, in between Sand Dune Court and the ocean. You have a primary dune situated out in front of all of the houses. Then you have a wetland pocket that is an extension of Sag Pond. So it's a brackish freshwater wetland system just to the north and west of the most westerly house within this project site. So again, you see this map here shows you the 2 lots side by side. This is 134, I might have them backwards, 142 and 152. And you can see the pink represents all of the existing site improvements on the property. This is the wetland pocket here. The ocean is down here. The dune crest is right around in here. So as you can see, the existing site improvements as they are situated on the property right now do not currently comply with the village standards for wetland or dune crest setbacks. The intention of this application is to make everything better, creating a net ecological benefit. So again, looking at the table, this table takes into consideration the minimum setbacks with regards to the entirety of the existing improvements
and the proposed improvements. So you have, with regards to the Village 245 dune crest setback requirements, there's a standard of 125 feet from the dune crest. As you can see from this map right here, the dune crest is right here. 125 feet is this red line right here. So almost all of the site improvements, with the exception of this swimming pool that currently exists, again, do not comply with that 125-foot setback requirement. So much so that the residents and the deck that are closest to the dune crest are situated 53 feet and 30 feet respectively. And we're proposing with the new house, which is in the blue, an 80-foot setback from the dune crest for the residents and a 64-foot setback from the deck. Again, those handouts that you have in front of you are just, duplicates of what you're seeing up here on the wall. This panel in the middle here is a comparative analysis of the existing in red and the proposed in blue. The idea there is just to show you how we're able to reduce a lot of these nonconformities that you see here in red and over here in red with the wetland setbacks. And you can follow through on the handout if you choose to do so. Moving to the Chapter 255 wetland regulations in the Village Code. Again, we're looking at where wetland buffering would be required. This is the only wetland system on the property or in relation to this project. So all of our setbacks are taken from this wetland pocket that has been flagged by the town. And currently you have a buffer that has only 11 feet of natural vegetation or some kind of mix of natural and invasive species between the manicured lawn and the wetland system. We're proposing a solid 75-foot plus buffer to take away a lot of this manicured lawn. In all, I'll get to that in a second. With regards to the structural setbacks, we have the residence, the deck, and the swimming pool. The swimming pool being the closest, that is currently 41 feet from wetlands. We're proposing to make it 75 feet from wetlands. You see the pool is sitting out here now. The deck, the deck that's most closest to the wetlands is 65 feet. We're proposing a deck setback 75 feet. That's what you see out in here. And then the pool that we're proposing, again, we're eliminating this pool right here in red and another pool in here. So we're reducing 2 pools to 1. Currently, the pool is situated 41 feet from wetlands. We're proposing a wetland setback of 75 feet. Again, just to remind the board, because these properties are developed, we're dealing with a reduced setback requirement of 75 feet for buffers and 100 feet for structural improvements. The septic system, so we have a septic system that's right here that is about 72 feet from wetlands. This is an antiquated sanitary system, and another one over here on this property that is probably closer to 140 feet. The system that we're proposing, of course, is an IA system with a minimum setback to the leaching field, which is out in here, of 166 feet. So that is more than compliant with the 150-foot standard. Going back to the actual buffering and the site improvements, this plan right here will give you a good idea of the actual amount of native vegetation buffering that's being offered that our client is willing to secure as a non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer area. Again, you can see this red line represents a 75-foot requirement. What you're seeing in here is in excess of the village standard for a 75-foot buffer. So if you were to apply a 75-foot solid buffer to this property, it would equate to 20,113 square feet. We're proposing 27,000 square feet of wetland buffer. Going to a little bit more detail on this. The current area of disturbance within the 75-foot buffer area is about 3,036 square feet. Again, that's mostly this swimming pool right in here. Our proposal is to have no structural improvements or no disturbance in that area. This area, as you see in this Kelly green and the dark green, these areas right here are going to be either brought back into native habitat buffer standards or maintained as native habitat. Wherever there's invasive species, they would be removed. We have a planting plan that is appropriate for seaside vegetation. Again, this habitat out in here is different than this habitat in here. We have plantings to create the proper ecology for each of those systems. The area of disturbance seaward of the coastal erosion hazard line is currently 4,633 square feet. Again, so the coastal erosion hazard line is this area right in here. Everything you see in red out in here is seaward of that line. We have pulled just about everything we can back into here to try to squeeze this, all of the program into this area that is sort of the sweeping arc around the wetlands and pushing it back away from the dune. So, sorry, we're reducing that coverage from 4,600 square feet to 2,900 square feet. The area of disturbance within the 125-foot dune setback is approximately 10,299 square feet. Again, that's everything from this line to this line, so that's everything in here. And we're reducing that down to roughly 9,700 square feet. Overall, with this project that we're proposing, we are proposing to sterilize or recreate native habitat in the amount of roughly 62,391 square feet. So everything we see in light green in here on this map is going to be converted to natural vegetation. We're moving everything back away from the wetlands, pulling everything back away from the ocean to try to recreate as much natural habitat as possible. So that's important for two reasons. One is, again, we know that the natural vegetation provides filtration for the wetland system and the natural resources around it. But it also, in preserving all of this area you see here in green, which, as you can relate to in here, is somewhat already developed, we're creating a natural corridor for wildlife to be able to move around the property, get into different habitats without any kind of obstruction amongst it. There's also a trail system that you can see on the map right here that is accessible by the community members. The idea here is that the community members will be able to continue utilizing that trail system through the natural habitat, and with the house being a one-story house, they won't be looking at some kind of major structure way up in the air. I know that's a lot of technical detail, but I'm happy to pause and answer any questions that you might have about that right now. Otherwise, I just want to get into the standards. So does anybody have any questions?
Brent, you spoke about merging 3 lots. Of course, this is not the board to come before to do that. But I'm curious about the rights of structures on the westernmost lot.
Oh, the currently vacant lot.
Yes.
Yes, we do recognize that that lot is not to be developed, and as part of the merger, it will remain undeveloped, and we're happy to enter in to the record an easement or a covenant that acknowledges the preservation or the continual preservation of that lot. It's already established in the subdivision regulations. Sorry, in the subdivision conditions surrounding the development of Sand Dune Court. But we're willing to further covenant against that. And it will be part of the covenanted buffer. If you look at this green, this is the lot right in here. And all of this green is part of the proposed buffer, so it will remain sterilized in one way or another.
So that trail that goes through, is that open to all the residents of Sagaponack or just a couple?
I believe it's designated for the community members of the subdivision because there really isn't much area to park down there, but I can get you a better answer on that.
I appreciate that. The other question I have, your septic, I can't delineate. I'm looking at L21. I don't know if that's your
L21 right here, this one right here. So the septic is up here.
Right.
In the corner. Yes.
And where is the driveway in relationship to the septic?
So the driveway comes in right here, right over top of the leaching field.
It comes over the top of the leaching field.
Correct.
Okay, that might be a problem. Now, the other question I have is on the west side of the residence, there appears to be a garage with, taking a guess, are those 3 cars in that garage?
Right here.
Yes.
That is not a garage. That is just a parking area. If you look at this map right here, it shows. it
Okay,
in
so
blue.
that's a parking area, but I'm trying to figure out how do those cars get to that parking
They
area?
come in the driveway, they go underneath the house, because remember, this house is gonna be way up in the air to meet the
Oh.
FEMA flood standards. So they come under the house, and they park right here so they can access the stairway that goes up. And remember, this is gonna be a very tall staircase, because I think it's about a 17-foot elevation change between grade and the first floor to meet the BFE.
So it's almost like a 2-story building on piles, right?
If you want to look at it that way, but the ground floor will just be
I'm
open.
saying, how much space under the house where those cars go under?
I want to say probably between the lowest girder and the grade. I would say it's probably at least 13, 14 feet. Because again, the FEMA standards, I believe this is an AE, I want to say it's 17. It's on one of the maps. I'm sorry, I don't seem to have it right here.
Should be 17.
I think it's AE 17 because the proposed first floor, I believe, is at 20.5 feet. And you have natural grade somewhere between 5.5, 6 feet and 8 feet currently. And again, this project has been downsized and reconsidered multiple times. Most recently in response to Marty's very detailed staff report. One of the things that was restudied was the need for fill. The idea was that, to your point, this thing was going to be sitting so high up in the air, albeit it's only going to be 1 story for the visual impacts. Because what you're talking about right now is one of the reasons why they don't want to put a 2nd story on, because if they're already starting at elevation 20, that thing's going to be sitting so high up in the air, it's going to look silly. So again, this project has been redesigned to minimize the fill only for where the sanitary system or the drainage requires it. And to your point, you did seem to have caution about the sanitary system with the driveway over it. This is a Caltech system that has been designed to withstand the cars going over top of it. And it will meet health department standards. It's been designed by PW Grosso.
I have 2 other questions, one of which is an oddball question. First question is, do you know how many bedrooms they're going to have in this residence?
5. That's a very good question.
And this is just me personally, nothing to do with your application. I'm just perplexed by the design of the house, the elongated, and then is this the architect?
Frank is the representative for the owner. The architect couldn't make it tonight. The design of the house has been studied again to, 1, keep it a 1-story house. They need square footage. So in order to make that happen in a 1-story setting, the footprint has an irregular shape to it to try to maximize the amount of the wetland setbacks. 2, again, aesthetically, they don't want something way up in the air. They want something that sits and blends into the dune. And the idea, as Frank just mentioned, is 5 bedrooms. We're not talking about a 10-bedroom house here. There's just open space, a lot of outdoor living to maximize the views. I mean, when you sit at this property, you have this beautiful view out over Sagaponic Pond, and then you have the ocean views as well. So the idea, the architects set it into the dunes so they can visualize the property from nearly a 365-degree view shed. Any other questions about the technical details?
Brad, do you know the square footage of the westernmost lot?
Square footage of, oh, the vacant lot? Frank, do you happen to have it off the top of your head?
Should be 0.8 acres.
How many?
0.8 acres.
That sounds about
Vacant
right,
lot.
yeah.
The
So about 34.
property data sheet says it's 0.6 acres.
They're not always completely accurate,
Okay.
but that's a guide. Did you have more things you wanted to say?
Just a couple more,
Okay.
if you don't mind. So the very last sheet of my handout, actually, I don't see it up here. We studied the conforming building envelopes as we looked into the practical alternatives. And if you flip to it, you'll see very quickly that this lot right here, you don't see it right here, but there's this tiny triangle right here that is the only conforming location on a property. I would say it's probably just a few square feet. This lot, of course, because it's, this lot here, of course, because it's further away from the wetlands, you do have a little bit more of a building envelope in here. And that's why where you see this house tucked, most of the house, with the exception of this finger item here, this sits in the conforming location of the property. So that's the technical matters. And then just real quickly, we did look at the village standards with regards to projects that cannot meet the setback requirements. 255-10D4 speaks to the approving authority may consider imposing less than the recommended setbacks if the approving authority determines that the applicant has demonstrated the following. You being the approving authority, we'd ask you to consider a buffer zone with an overall average width equivalent to the minimum required buffer zone set forth. As I walked you through, this is more than exceeding the standards for a minimum buffer requirement. B speaks to the proposed work and location will not impair the capacity of the wetlands and buffer to provide essential wildlife habitat characteristics, among other things, food, shelter, breeding, cover, screening, as well as essential corridors and connective functions. As I mentioned, this plan shows that the idea is to create a corridor connecting this natural feature to the natural features along the ocean. We got primary dunes with dune vegetation mixed into more seaside, tidal, freshwater vegetation around that system right there, providing habitat for all kinds of coastal wildlife species. Subsection C says the proposed work and location will not impair wetlands and surface water quality by incorporating erosion, sedimentation, and runoff controls to minimize non-point source pollution. There is a sedimentation erosion control plan associated with this project. All stormwater runoff will be captured on site. The details aren't on here, but they are in the submission package. There's Caltech systems for drainage underneath. Oh, here they are. All the way underneath the house to collect all the stormwater runoff. Nothing from the property will leave the property. Nothing from the upland areas will work its way into the buffer. Only runoff would be from some of the areas around in here, but that'll be captured in the buffer itself, and same with the dune system. And then finally, subsection D says mitigating measures shall be implemented that contribute to the protection and enhancement of wetlands and wetland benefits. Mitigating features. Obviously we're removing the antiquated sanitary systems, denitrifying the wastewater. We are providing a substantial amount of buffering, native vegetation, wildlife habitat appropriate. We are reducing density. I think that's important for this board to understand. And my client is sacrificing the ability to redevelop two properties, as two separate single-family residential uses, each of which would require some portion of a variance from this board for these same standards. So whether we proposed this project or we came back to you with two separate applications to redevelop these as two separate lots, we would be asking you for relief. And the relief for the redevelopment of this lot alone would be much more substantial than what we're asking for today. You would not get as much buffer as we're proposing, because we go right back to that study that I showed you about. There's no conforming building envelope on this property. It's this little triangle right in here. So I'd ask the board to seriously consider the sacrifice that's being made to reduce the density, which is a benefit to this area, by cutting down on the amount of wastewater and use of the overall use of the property. Those are the standards by which you guys are supposed to make your decision. I'm here to answer any more questions. Do you have anything else to add?
No, thank you.
Any questions?
I'll have questions later, but I want to hear Marty's presentation also.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. There is a preliminary advisory report dated July 8, 2024. It's an 11-page detailed technical report that responded to the original plans that were filed. I recommend that board members read the report, as it provides good characterization of site conditions, the environmental values of the on-site wetlands and dunelands, the constraints, the challenges of building at this site. It provides history in terms of prior permitting and other actions. The original report had recommended denial of the application, and it had set out in pages 7 to 11 the reasons why the application doesn't conform with the wetland permit issuance standards and why it should be denied. So I would start by recommending that, again, that board members review that report. That being said, the applicant has since scaled back the extent of construction. If you look at the original plan that was on file, the applicant was seeking this board's approval to construct a tennis court in the easternmost portion of the 3 lots, which prevented the ability from trying to set the new construction in terms of the main residence and the accessory structures at conforming setbacks. So one of the recommendations that I had made early on was that the plans for the tennis court be abandoned, and they have since been abandoned. The environmental constraints of this property not only include the dunelands and the westerly wetlands, but upon review of the Conservation Board permit history, I found that there was a considerable area of brackish to fresh wetlands on the easterly most parcel. And as part of a Conservation Board decision, this board had not only required that those on-site wetlands be preserved, but that a 50-foot naturally vegetated buffer be established and protected. So I'll hand up that prior conservation board approved plan. So that large oval area of wetlands, which has since been cleared and likely partially regraded, and is today being maintained as lawn, essentially occurred in this area right here, with the buffer extending 50 feet towards the Atlantic Ocean. So one of the challenges of this application is not only to try and come forward with a conforming plan with regards to wetland construction buffer setbacks, landward of the westerly wetlands, but also to look at opportunities for mitigating the significant wetland losses that historically occurred at the site. Now, those losses did occur prior to the current ownership. Because that area is today being maintained as hedges and lawn, and there is very minimal natural vegetation, I recognized early on that rather than ask the applicant to try and reclaim those easterly wetlands, a better plan for the area would be to shift the residents to the easterly part of the three merged parcels. One of the things that Chapter 225, which is the village wetlands law, which was modeled after Chapter 325, says that the goal should be no net wetland losses, and where there have been wetland losses, either we should seek to restore those areas or to try and offset those losses by integrating environmental mitigation into the project design. So I had recommended that the best way to address those losses was to preserve as large of a block of natural open space as possible, contiguous with both the westerly wetlands and the dunelands as well. I don't know if the applicant mentioned this, but I had asked that the applicant provide an updated project description, because if you look at my advisory report, it's a description of the original project plans. So there is an updated project description dated November 22nd, 2024, which in a similar fashion to my original project description details all the proposed square footages and wetland setbacks as well. And the initial plans had called for some construction to extend into that western most property. Again, the plans have been scaled back, so the applicant is no longer proposing any construction within that westerly vacant parcel, which is to be merged with the two other existing developed properties. In the interest of putting forward a plan that conforms as much as practical with the required wetland setbacks from the westerly wetlands, not being while acknowledging the significant progress that has been made by the applicant by redesign of this project, I still see a need for further refinement, and also as required by Chapter 225, additional analysis of practicable alternatives. Again, 225 is modeled off 325, and so the village wetland law requires that the applicant go through the practicable alternatives analysis so that a demonstration can be made that the plans that are being put forward would either conform with all of the required wetland permit issuance standards and/or result in the least environmental damage of any possible alternative designs for this site. There are certainly opportunities for some further reconfiguration and shifting of the planned construction in order to either achieve the minimum required 100-foot wetland construction setback or to come as close to that as possible. In addition to that, one of the changes that I see as absolutely essential is, as was spoken to by the applicant, portions of the redevelopment would extend seaward of the coastal erosion hazard area of new construction is not permitted seaward of the coastal erosion hazard area law. So, as was spoken to by the applicant, a variance would need to be sought from the Village Coastal Erosion Hazard Board of Appeals. The portions of the project plans that extend seaward, and you have copies of these plans as well in the file, is about half of the proposed swimming pool area and a considerable area of deck. So in the interest not only of avoiding the need to seek coastal erosion hazard area variance, as well as to mitigate the wetland losses by protecting as much natural habitat, whether that be wetland buffers or dunelands, I would recommend that the applicant reconfigure the construction so that no portion of the accessory structures would extend seaward of that coastal erosion hazard area line. I was somewhat surprised to hear that the leaching fields can be installed beneath the driveway because typically the Suffolk County Department of Health Services would not permit that. Of course, there's always an opportunity to seek variances, but the applicant may want to see if the configuration of those leach fields can be changed to get it out of the driveway area. Now, in the interest of looking at whether or not there are practicable alternatives that meet the minimum required wetland construction setback of 100 feet, notwithstanding the needed elevation of the new residence on pilings, what jumps out at you is there is a potential ability to take some of this deck area and pool area and put it on the west side of the house. Rather than have additional parking on the west side of the house, it would seem to make better sense to take advantage of the portion of the northerly wing of the house that would be on open elevated pilings, because certainly you would have the height clearance to park cars, and that would be under, of course, the finished first floor in this area here. What that would do is that would actually free up the area that is being proposed as additional parking. The plan, notwithstanding the proposed height of the new residence, the plan for access in terms of stairways and landings and what appears to be walled planters would seem excessive. There's certainly a way that any access stairs could be redesigned so that the applicant is not having to use this much of the property for the purposes of access. Of course, there's also the option of integrating an elevator for physically challenged persons to gain access to the residence as well. This is your 100-foot setback from the wetlands right now. You can see that right now a considerable amount of the planned pool and outdoor deck area would come as close to 75 feet land width of wetlands. You look at the applicant's updated project description, you can see that the planned in-ground swimming pool and spa would have a footprint of 1,449 square feet, which I don't need to tell you is a very large pool. So there certainly is an opportunity to reduce the size of the pool as well. The residence, the footprint of the residence is estimated to be 7,445 square feet, and the decks. This description, I don't know if this is accurate. The description seems to be indicating that the deck coverage would total over 12,000 square feet. That does seem right.
That's incorrect.
Yeah, that's got to be incorrect. So I think there's I think what Chapter 225 does is to essentially ask the applicant to demonstrate that there are no practicable alternate designs for redevelopment that would either conform with the required wetland construction setbacks or come as close to conforming as possible. So I think what I think in order to render a decision as to whether or not the required wetland permit issue standards are being met, the applicant does need to give further consideration to other alternatives and needs to better demonstrate why this portion of the property couldn't be used for some of the accessory improvements that the applicant has in mind. I know the applicant, of course, has a certain vision for the property, because I think one of the design options that I may have asked the applicant to look at is to reconfigure the house so that the main residence would be more in this area of the property, thereby allowing for a shifting of the pool and decks, either to conform with the minimum required 100 foot setback, or to get a lot closer to that. So, there's certainly an opportunity to scale back the footprints, considering the size of the pool and the decks. I had offered early on that the applicant could come forward with a two-story structure, which allows for better consolidation of the house footprint. Could come forward with a plan with rooftop deck and pool, but as indicated by the applicant, they don't have an interest in building a two-story residence. So in some, while not necessarily asking the applicant to significantly increase due setbacks, I do think that the applicant needs to shift the construction so it's wholly landward of the coastal erosion hazard area, and look at whether, as a design option, the pool could be put here, or the pool could be reconfigured here, and look at a reconfigured home that takes greater advantage of this area here. Because this entire area here is 100 feet back from the wetlands. So again, it's not just a matter of coming forward with a plan that achieves those minimum required setbacks. Part of this is also finding a creative way to offset the significant wetland loss and the significant wetland buffer loss that occurred at this property, which again occurred prior to the current landowner's ownership. Thank you.
Ready for me again?
Sure.
Would you like my rebuttal, or would you like to ask questions?
I have a question, if you don't mind. What is the height of the tallest spot of this dwelling?
In terms of the overall elevation from grade or from sea level?
The total height from grade.
Okay, so first floor is at 20. There are elevations in your submission, in the submission package, but I'm shooting from the hip here. I would think that it would be close to 32 to 34.
That's all?
Well, it's a one-story house. Again, I could be wrong. I don't have the elevations in front of me. I know they're part of the submission package. I can get that answer for you.
That's about right.
32. Again, this
I
is,
didn't hear what he said.
32 is about right. Again, this is a one-story house for that reason. If you put a second story on top of it, it becomes 44.
All right, thank you.
Plan review is all next.
I'm just going to make it quick.
Okay.
Because I expect that you're going to want time to read the report, although I would love for you to close the hearing. I know that's probably not a reality tonight. So just very quickly going through a couple of things. I did touch on the practicable alternatives. In my professional opinion, having done this for 22 years, they're fairly obvious. One is the redevelopment of the sites. We talked about that, the potential environmental impacts versus what we are proposing are fairly obvious. You have a swimming pool, you've got a house, you have no conforming envelope. You're going to have structural improvements and that are closer to the wetlands. You'll have structural improvements that are probably similar to what you're seeing today. It's hard to move them back and find a conforming location. I'd ask you to seriously consider that in your deliberations. Secondly, the two-story house. That's another practical alternative. We talked about that, taking this program, condensing the footprint, and going up. I just mentioned, the elevations. We will get into issues with village height requirements. Getting a height variance in the village of Sagaponack is nearly impossible. I shouldn't say that. It's very difficult. And again, from a visual perspective, it is not our client's intention to have this house sitting way on top of the dune. It's a modern house. It's going to have a lot of glass on it. It's going to be very visual. I'm sorry.
How much glass?
What's that?
How much glass?
Again, I'm really
Maybe
sorry.
Frank knows. Frank, how much glass?
In terms of percentage of the elevations, I have to calculate it, but if you look closely at the plan,
You should probably step up to the podium and make sure we're recording this.
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
I wasn't planning on speaking, but yeah, Frank Haftel, and I work with the owner of the property, and I'm representing them on this project as well. I can quickly calculate and get.
I'll tell you what my concern is.
Yeah.
So maybe you could work around that. Fowl, birds.
There was a comment made by Mr. Shea about protective film on the glass, which is going to be addressed as part of the package. It's going to be incorporated into the design. The glass hasn't been specified yet, but that is something that we have agreed to comply with.
Does that work?
yes.
I was actually going to make that point as part of our second story issue. That was where I was going with that.
Don't tell me I took some wind out of your sails.
No, you were leading me right into my next
leading me
comment.
right into it? Okay.
Which is, having a second story in a modern house. We're very familiar with the modern houses. While we will be putting glass in place that is bird resistant or deterrent, a second story house would invite higher elevations of glass closer to migratory bird flyovers. So another reason why we want to keep this house tucked into.
Sorry, I can't help myself. If you wouldn't mind indulging me for just a couple of minutes, I'd like to address a couple of points that Mr. Shea brought up. And I guess I should start, if I may, I should start by apologizing to Mr. Shea for wasting or taking up, I don't know, three and a half years of his time going through this application. I mention that because we have very seriously considered many alternatives to the design of this house. And we've learned a lot throughout the process, and we have, I don't know if sacrifice or compromise, I don't know really if there's a right word for it, but we've altered the design.
Sacrifice is not such a great word.
I agree. That's why I'm not sure really what the word is, but we've modified it. However you want to characterize, what that entailed.
The swimming pool is bigger than my house.
Yeah. It's a big swimming pool. It's clear. It's 18 by 60. There's no denial.
I
But
digress, I'm sorry.
But I think it's important to note that we have responded to I think all of the comments, maybe not all of them to the extent that would be ideal in terms of addressing Mr. Shea's presentation just a few minutes ago, but the entire house, the building itself, is north of the coastal erosion line. The only part that is extending below it are the non-covered areas, right? So the deck and the pool. We understand, and I don't pretend to know your precedent as well as you do, obviously, because I haven't been in front of this board. But I understand from our consultants that those are variances that are often given, and in fact, even some of our neighbors may have enjoyed them. And so that's something that we did. We retreated north. By retreating north, we had the option of either having to ask for a front yard variance or redesigning the house to stay within the box, right, within the south of the front yard. I'm sorry, not variance, but south of the front yard setback and north of the coastal erosion line. We have done that. There was an oversight at one point where a little notch of the property extended into the reserve lot. We've corrected that. That was purely an oversight. Nobody ever intended to build any structure, whether open or not. The entire construction, whether open or not, is outside of the 75-foot wetland setback. The 99.9% of the building is outside of the 100-foot setback. Again, building. When I say building on a 100-foot setback, I'm talking about the enclosed building. So that's also something that we've changed. If we were to push everything inside the 125-foot setback, which is this line, and north of the coastal erosion line, and south of the front yard setback, and east of the side yard, we would end up, out of this entire property, which the owner has invested in significantly, we would end up with a buildable area that would be where my finger is outlining, which is just, and on top of that, we would have to go to the zoning board for that would be a two-story home, right? So that would be roughly 45 feet up in the air to the top floor, and we would need significant variances off of the pyramid wall. So we would end up with something that really isn't anything that anybody would build. I shouldn't say anybody. That certainly we would not build on these three lots. We are, and as Brent mentioned before, we are already taking, where you see this dotted out, this dashed outline, we're taking 3 homes that are invading the 75-foot setback and the 100-foot setback and the coastal erosion line. We're demolishing these and building something that is only to the extent that we're requesting. And if we were to build new homes, that would be also the case. It would be much more invasive into the existing.
The structures below the coastal erosion, what would you estimate that to be, about 15 feet?
Out of the southern line of the coastal erosion line.
The swimming pool is what, 18 wide?
I'd say it's closer to 10.
Yeah, 10.
So if the pool is 18.
Yeah, that's 9 right there.
Yeah, so the coastal erosion hazard line is right here, so it's about half of it.
Yeah.
It's about 10 to 12, 10 to 11.
Yeah, but you have that other structure there, don't you?
Right here?
Yes.
That's a deck.
It's a deck.
Yeah, so that orange dashed line is the seaward point of the coastal erosion hazard line. So you're talking about everywhere from here.
Okay, so, all right, I'll give you the benefit of doubt, 10 feet.
Yeah.
Guessing, and I don't want to guess, but in the elongated side of the house, I would imagine that's where your bedrooms are?
Yeah, this side of the house, correct. The side that's perpendicular to the.
So if my calculation is correct, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would need to have 10 feet someplace to get all of those structures above the coastal erosion, am I?
Without sacrificing any of the the design that's already here, yes,
Okay,
yes.
that's something maybe to think about.
But shifting it north would also require invading the 75-foot line unless we shrunk the pool significantly or tried to build it, perhaps something else would have to get the stairs into the house.
Okay, good point, good point.
So we provide also one last thing, Brad, not to hijack your presentation.
No,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
We provide a detailed list, which I'm happy to read through to the board of the comparison between the square footages that are inside all of the several restrictions we just mentioned, 75 feet off the wetlands, 100, 135, current versus what we're proposing and everything.
Yeah, we have that.
Okay, excellent. Thank
Oh,
you.
but thank you, we have that.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Any questions? Obviously.
No, thank you for explaining that.
So just piggybacking on what Frank was talking about a little bit, going back to the practical alternatives, again, I identified three. One is the redevelopment of the two sites as single and separate lots. We talked about that. The two-story house thing, it triggers issues with pyramid and height. And then the actual shrinking of the house, which is something that you just sort of broached with Frank, is the idea of shrinking the house or condensing the program from a one-story to a two-story brings into consideration something I had talked to you about early on, which is the fact that there's no conforming envelope on this lot right here. You know, and again, if you flip to the back of that handout that I gave to you, you'll see there's a little sliver here. So if we look at the practical alternatives and try to achieve that 100-foot setback across the board, you'd be left with no conforming envelope on this property. So we have a lot here, we have a lot here, and we have a lot here. This lot is sterilized for all intents and purposes. If you try to, you know, enforce the 100-foot setback, wetland setback on this lot, you are essentially stripping the development off of this lot. So now we're almost nearly sterilizing this lot. Now we're left with just the one lot. So at what point does it really make sense for us to even be here talking to you about this application if we're trying to, if you're asking us to sterilize an otherwise developable property? You know, and that's where I'd like the board to really consider the standards and the way they're written. We did look at the practical alternatives. I'm trying to walk you through them. I know it's, you know, the idea of practical alternatives is very loose. You know, it's very difficult to really present. It's difficult to defend, and it's also difficult to rebut. You know, because in my opinion, the practical alternatives are pretty set in stone. You try to force a two-story house, you try to force a reduction in the size of the house, you're simply looking at sterilizing a developable lot. If you try to look at the redevelopment of the two properties as single and separate, you're not going to get the environmental benefits that you're getting with this application. And then, again, I would just ask you to take that into consideration. With regards to some of the comments that Marty had made, I respect them. You know, I respect Marty. I've been working with him a long time. They're legitimate comments. Again, I would like the board to just recognize that this application has a lot of merit because you're talking about merging two uses into one. Take that into consideration. Moving the accessory structures or the entire program back behind the coastal erosion hazard line. Again, I'd ask you to concentrate on that 100-foot setback line, which is green here, and the coastal erosion hazard line here. You know, what you're left with on this property right here is just this little triangle right here. Again, you can't squeeze a house into that. So please take that into consideration, that if we do try to push everything north of the coastal erosion hazard line, we are really crammed in here, and we will not be able to achieve the 5-bedroom house without going to a second story and triggering all those other things that I talked about. Removing the parking on the west side of the house, again, this parking right here is just a place for people to park and get up on the staircase and get up into the house. We will look with the design team on what that staircase design actually is and whether or not we can reduce it down. I don't really see the impacts of that staircase in terms of your overall benefits associated with this application, but we will look at it. It's something that the board is interested in us looking at. reducing the size of the pool. I was brought into this application probably about a year ago, maybe a little bit less. As Frank had advised the board, this has been an ongoing application for probably going back 3 years. We looked at it very intuitively with Frank and the owner and the design team and say, what is it that we're trying to achieve here? And what was given back to me was, I'd like you to consider, it was given to me, the fact that we're removing 2 swimming pools and asking for 1. So yes, I do agree with you that the pool is rather large, relatively speaking. But when you think about the 2 pools combined and what we're asking you to approve, you're talking about less square footage overall. So it is a reduction in the size of the pool, albeit one larger pool in removing 2 standard size swimming pools, but it's something for you to consider as well. And then reconfiguration of the house. As Frank has said,
Could we stay with the pool for a second,
Sure.
do you mind?
Sure.
I'm not that familiar with swimming pools. I was just wondering, is 1,000 square foot swimming pool, is that a pretty common thing, like in Sagaponack and Meadow Lane, so forth?
What I'm seeing, I'm not an architect either, but what I'm seeing is that standard pool anymore is almost like 50 by 18 or 50 by 20, so yes.
Okay.
A traditional swimming pool is 20 by 40, so that's 800 square feet. But it seems like pools are getting longer, so they can have these stadium entry steps or some kind of more gradual stepping into the pool. People also want them for laps. We're seeing a lot more of our clients looking for lap pools where they can actually swim a full-size lap. So it's not a full-size pool in terms of its width, because it normally would be a 20-foot wide pool. They have reduced the width of the pool to 18. They're asking for a longer pool, again, with the understanding that they're removing 2 pools to replace it with 1. And then again, the reconfiguration of the house. We did talk about that. We studied this at length. It's been reconfigured now twice. The most recent reconfiguration was to address Marty's staff report. Again, it does look like a larger footprint of a house, but it's 7,000 square feet, plus or minus. When you compare that to the existing square footage of the 2 houses, it's less, obviously. So I do wish the board would look at all of those things when it thinks about the practical alternatives analysis that we're presenting to you. And with that, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. I'm not necessarily asking that the house be reconfigured, nor asking that they explore building a 2-story house rather than a 1-story house. My goal is to always try and work with landowners to try and work towards a design that is generally consistent with their vision for their residents. But in light of the wetland permit issuance standards, I think the main issue is the accessory improvements, deck and the pool, and the size of the pool. Early on, as I mentioned previously, I think I said that if you build a lot in a home, and I'm hearing that the home's going to have a lot of glass, so it sounds like it's going to be modded. There's always a design option of having a rooftop deck and pool that gives you considerable additional deck area, rather than having to seek significant relief from the setback requirements. So I don't really know what the landowner's current vision is in terms of what that house is going to look like, whether or not it is indeed going to be a modern house with a flat roof, or whether or not it's going to have a gable roof or some other roof. But again, the required wetland construction setback, notwithstanding the need to somehow mitigate the loss of the historic loss of
considerable wetlands in this area is 100 feet, not 125 feet. This is 100 foot line right here. Only the northwest corner of the residence is currently designed would come within that 100-foot setback with its closest setback at 93 feet. So the home itself is largely conforming. What I think the applicant needs to demonstrate is why the pool and deck couldn't be situated on the west side of the house, or why the size of the pool couldn't be scaled back or reduced, or why the decks couldn't be changed. The difficulty, of course, with sticking with this house footprint is desired deck on the seaward side that would extend seaward of the coastal erosion hazard area. So I think the applicant still needs to look at whether or not the planned improvements, the seaward of the sea hollow can be eliminated by some interior redesign. Notwithstanding that the applicant is showing on here a 125-foot dune crest setback cutting through the house, I, of course, am not asking that the applicant comply with that setback requirement. So this is just a matter of going through the exercise of making sure that this plan is the best design option for this property. And part of that exercise, looking at the current plan, is to see whether or not the location of the pool and the deck could be shifted to the west side of the house, or whether or not this could be scaled back a bit to get that construction out of the coastal erosion hazard area and to lessen the setback relief that's needed for the accessory improvements.
So, Brad, a few comments. The westernmost lot is already sterilized. So when you give the amount of buffer that you're offering, that includes that, which is something around 30,000 square feet. So your presentation sounds like you're giving away a lot when already much of that is already there without your control because it comes with the land. Another is that mitigation is not the IA system that's required both by town and county. There's a line of reasoning that I'm having trouble sorting out, and that is you're offering to merge two lots and you're claiming the benefits of having one house instead of two. And now when you're talking about it squeezing it to only have a small part of one lot as conforming, well, isn't that what you're doing? You're giving up one lot. So don't complain about giving up one lot if you want to give up one lot for this project. Because the arguments you've been offering for this size house and structure is not meeting all the standards. And you're finding it difficult, if not impossible, to meet all those standards, given the size of the project. That would suggest that the lot is constrained. And when there's a constrained lot, we try to look at things to make utility of the space more useful and more productive. with a single-story house, you end up designing a sprawling structure on a constrained lot. We're running into conflict that way. It gets difficult. If you were to utilize 2 stories, you could probably achieve greater than your 7,000 square feet of usable space and meet perhaps all the standards. I'm not sure a single story is the best use of this lot given the size of the project that you're asking for. A second story, generally, if you look at like square footages of space, not of footprint, and do a second story, in other words, a 7,000 square foot footprint or a 3,500 square foot footprint with 2 stories, the 35 with 2 stories is usually way less onerous environmentally. Of course, doing all that is redesigning again. I'm not talking about, I'm just analyzing what you're saying and what I'm seeing to try to see if we can make some sense of what's going on here. Because if you want to make this lot environmentally better, then it would be wise to seek to achieve more of the setbacks, particularly that area for the coastal erosion line. I don't like approving something that is clearly not conforming when there may be a way to make it conforming. And it is a very big project. And asking us to approve a very big project on a constrained lot means that we must look at alternatives. What are the practical alternatives? I am sure there are some. And one of them might be downsizing. But whenever we talk about downsizing, things you don't want to do, you always come back to what it is now. What you could do is leave it right the way it is. Well, then you've got to decide what you want while you're here. If you want to leave it the way it is, you don't need to go on with this hearing. But I suspect you don't want to leave it the way it is. And that's why you've invested in the amount of property you have. But once this is done, there's no going back. We don't see a chance to redo this. And it's already approving something that is much bigger than perhaps is necessary. So I think it is appropriate to look at this clearly. I think it is appropriate to look at the building envelope and see what can be achieved within that building envelope. There are some design issues that have been talked about that I think can be adjusted, but it means changing some design. There's a lot of space in this lot, even if you meet all the recommended setbacks. So I'm not real comfortable with what I'm seeing here right now, because I fear that we could very well, if we do what you're asking, approve something that we'll look back and say, why did we do that? Because it is so big on top of a fragile dune.
Can I offer a suggestion? In light of what Harry has been saying about a 2-story house, I don't know if you've thought of this, maybe you have. It doesn't necessarily have to be the entire house as a 2-story house. But I look at, and I keep referring to that elongated side. If you took half of that and put the other half on top, you would have more than enough room to move out of the coastal area and certainly meet the setback for wetland.
Is the first floor elevation of 20, which I think that's what you said your first floor elevation is?
Correct.
Is that a requirement?
To meet FEMA standards, yes.
That's what?
To meet FEMA standards, yes.
Okay. And is that a requirement over the entire area of the structure?
Yes.
What I'm seeing across a lot of area along the ocean is bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm not sure that's wise. This is another one. It's much, much bigger than what's there. I understand it's maybe smaller than the combination of the other two that are there, but if they came in for redevelopment, there would be some restrictions on that. Already, a lot is going on in this lot that probably should not have, given the history of the wetlands in 1990. I'm not saying we're going back to that. I don't know how we can. But I don't know that approving this lot, approving this project on this lot does meet, it does meet the overall gist of chapter 225 of the Village of Sagaponic. So I'm telling you a lot of general things. I don't know if any of that is helpful to you, but I'm mostly telling you what I'm thinking about as I've heard this presentation. And I want to be very respectful of all the time you spent, all the work you spent, all the money you spent. And I don't think any of that is wasted. But I see this as a process to get to the place that meets the standards of the village and also meets the vision of the applicant. Usually we can find a place where that happens, and I hope we can. So those are my thoughts.
That is one thing we have in common, amongst others. If I could just make a point of clarification, because I'm not saying you may be missing it, because you probably do get it, but I need to just remind the board that I'm sorry that the lines have fallen off here, but these maps did have the lot lines shown on here. 2 points that you made that were very important. One is that the buffer that's being proposed is partly within the currently vacant lot. Yes, that is true. But the lot line is in here. So all of this area that you're seeing in green is now going to become part of the covenanted wetland buffer. And that's important to understand, because as you can see right here, that incorporates the swimming pool and a portion of the structures in here. So that leads me to my next point that I need to clarify is, again, without having these lot lines drawn here, the next time I come back, I'm sure you're gonna hold this over, I'm gonna make sure that they're drawn on here. You'll see that this lot right here has a lot line that looks something like this and something like this, right in here. And this green line right here is that 100-foot setback, that standard that has been referred to often tonight. That's the 100-foot structural setback. This line right here, this thick line, that's the coastal erosion hazard line. That's not even the 125-foot setback that the village standards make you go to. That's way back here. But if you choose this gray line and this green line, what you're left with to meet the standards, which is something that keeps being referred to, is this little triangle right here. So that's just this lot alone. And what I'm asking the board to realize is that if you're pushing for us to meet that 100-foot standard and meet that dune crest, you've all but sterilized that middle lot. And that's not something that would be appropriate for us to even consider. You know, and that's why we're here before you, because I understand this board is very detailed. You guys, you know, do the right thing and you put everything to the test. I wouldn't be here presenting to you if I didn't think that this was a realistic application that has some merit with regards to this existing development on this middle lot. I'm asking you to recognize that we're stripping the development from it and asking to reconfigure the structural improvements. With that being said, I have heard the comments. I'm happy to come back and give this another try after having consulted with my client and design team and take your comments into consideration. I'm also happy to stand here and have a little bit more dialogue if anybody has additional questions. But I would like for the board to not let this fall by the wayside. That is important. It's in the analysis, it's in the map here. You can see the tiny triangle that shows the conforming building envelope. We're doing a lot to make everything better. I believe this is a net ecological benefit relative to what's there. Does it meet the standards? No. And that's why we looked at the standards and how you need to weigh those against the variances that we're asking for.
Just quickly. Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst, just for clarification again. I am not asking that the applicant come forward with a plan that provides for a 125-foot setback from the dune crest. Only asking that the applicant look at design options that would take this deck and pool construction out of the coastal erosion hazard area, and that comes closer to meeting the 100-foot setback from wetlands. Of course, there are other dimensional setback requirements that have to be met at the village level that might require relief, but the applicant continues to say that the only conforming footprint is this triangle in the center. And again, as I mentioned before, I'm not even necessarily looking for the house layout to change. Just looking for the applicant to work on this portion of the development plan so that we could have a plan that maximizes protection for the dunelands on site wetlands. Thank you. No, it's not practicable for the applicant to come forward with a plan that achieves 125-foot setback from the dune crest, so I'm not asking for that. I'm just looking to get construction at coastal erosion hazard.
That's the dune crest, right? The dune crest is this black line here. I can't read the tiny.
This dark black line is the dune crest.
I can't read the tiny font that gives.
This stuff. Does that make it any better?
It's clear.
So 64 feet to the deck, 80 feet to the residence. And 64 feet, so to the pool goes the same. It doesn't say that, but it's a very similar setback. And it appears to be about 10 feet over the coastal erosion hazard area line, which interestingly enough is not a line, it's an area line.
Yeah. It's a line that was drawn with too heavy of a pen.
Yeah.
But I will confirm or agree with what you said, that most of the structure does meet the wetland setback line of chapter 225. specifically, it would seem to me that if you were to make some adjustments to move the deck and the pool landward of the coastal erosion hazard area line, there are some opportunities in the areas where it says stairs and parking. I see that as a space. I also see space on the eastern side which says drive. Interesting shape. There's a curved area that's not part of the drive. I'm not sure why that drive goes so far all the way to the coastal erosion hazard line. But there's a certain amount
You talking about in here?
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so there's another entryway to the house, right here in this corner of the house. So there's enough room for a car to park in there.
So I think we've done as much as we can here tonight. Thank you for the presentation. I need to ask if there's anyone in the public who wants to speak in this application, either on Zoom or in the public. So there is none, so we need to come back and take a look at this. A lot of information has been presented. What I'm hearing from the presentations is that I guess let's start with the positive things.
I hope you'd end with the positive things.
Well, I'm sure we will, but there are a lot of benefits with this plan. So there are some applications where we just say, this is wholesale, it's not going to work, we're going to start all over. That's not where we are here. This appears to need some adjusting, but it's going to take some thought and some consulting with the client to see if something will work. And I haven't heard anything about anybody asking you to reduce the size of the structure all alone as one issue. That may be necessary to achieve something else, but we're not talking about the size of it, even though it's very large. The biggest issue that I'm hearing is that area that is seaward of the coastal erosion hazard area line. And if you can achieve that, I suspect we can move forward and close.
I think I have my orders.
Any other comments? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
When do you want to come back?
As soon as you have, well, probably need some time to talk about it. When's your next available opening, Karina? Are you February or January?
We have a lot of blanks in our schedule.
Yeah, the next meeting isn't doable anyway, but there are a couple things on here that were withdrawn last time, so they shouldn't be on there anyway.
Yes.
There's
Now,
nothing
when
in-
you come back, it may not take very long.
Yeah, if you
I
get
hope
the
so. We went through a lot. I heard what you had to say.
We've got a whole idea what this is about.
There's nothing in January.
That's one of the reasons why I don't want it to linger too long, because I forget very easily. We all are human, so.
I know. Look at the
Pressure.
world,
Frank
and
will
we're
not
off to
let
something else.
We
There's
actually,
nothing
I
in
said, you're not
January
gonna let
at
him
all.
forget.
January
have-
8th or 22nd.
yeah, we have, just looking at our schedule, we have two scheduled for December 18th that have been withdrawn. 18th is a clean slate. I don't think you should
No,
come back on the 18th.
that can't
You need
happen.
more time than that.
The 8th or the 22nd of January.
How about the 22nd of January? Because the holidays would slow us down with redesign. The 8th might be tough, but
You can get all your
I don't
work
want to
done.
withdraw. I want to be able to come here and give Marty and the board time to look at the plans too.
It'd be good to give it to Marty a week ahead of time.
At least, yeah, that's our goal.
So what we do, I think we can be ready. Again, if it's a matter of just dealing with the area south of the coastal erosion line, there's probably not too many things we can. I apologize. Not too many things we can do with it. So I think we can be ready for the 8th.
I want to make it the 22nd. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, you think the holidays?
Yeah, the holidays are going to slow us down, and I don't
Yeah.
want to withdraw.
Yeah.
Or sorry, but
You can have all the ideas worked out, but then you have to have people drawing things and surveys
Exactly.
and whatnot. That's going to take you a
and I want to give Marty
So
time to look at it.
And plus, staff needs time to
Yeah.
You
review.
make the print a little bit larger.
You could bring that
I-
back.
You can
That's a
get-
note.
You can get bigger magnifiers. 22nd? Yeah.
January 22nd. Is there a motion to adjourn to January 22nd?
There is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And also, for the record,
Zeb.
Zeb has seen fit to recuse himself on this application.
He left within a couple of minutes of you presenting, but didn't want to interrupt.
I don't know why, I don't need to know why,
Yeah.
but he said he needed to recuse himself and he left. So he'll be leaving on each of the following times that this is discussed.
He must have seen something as he got into it that
Yeah.
caused him to do that.
It doesn't matter, but we have other board members, we don't have to have everybody present.
Well, I do want to thank you again for your time and your comments. We heard them. We'll get back to you guys and have a happy holiday, everyone. Thank you again.
You as well, thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Take care.
There were 4 of us here that would, after he
Yes.
left, otherwise we would have had to stop.
So, again, yeah.
All right. I think I put everything back in the folder. Marty mentioned the staff report. It's not in here, so if you want us to read it, we'll let him.
Well, you know
Yeah,
what?
I got a copy this
I
morning.
think I gave you my packet.
Yeah, I have to put all this, that's
No,
the original.
my packet for the night.
That's
There
not
we go.
mine.
All right.
That's not mine.
Okay, moving forward on the agenda, we have advisory reports for the planning board,
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it.
Watermill Museum.
This is a pending planning board site plan and wetland permit application for the Watermill Museum. The museum is looking to upgrade their sanitary system to an IARWTS. So there are 2 brief recommended advisory comments. First is that the Conservation Board supports the planned sanitary upgrade as the installation of a nitrogen reducing innovative alternative on-site wastewater treatment system will enhance protection for the surface waters and wetlands of Mill Creek. And second, the modernization of the sanitary system is also likely to encourage museum visitation as well as facilitate interpretation, public outreach, environmental education, and students.
Is there a motion to send these comments to the planning board?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? John Peter Lauren.
Say pending 2-lot subdivision for a track on the north side of Noyak Road that contains an existing residence as well as extensive forested area and freshwater wetlands. There are several recommended advisory comments. The first is that the Conservation Board supports the subdivision map of John Peter Lauren, pre-application submission as prepared by Nathan Taft Corwin III and Vincent Gordiello with a final revision date of November 20, 2024, as the that revision date actually needs to be no, that is correct. As the plat adheres to the required wetland sanitary construction and land disturbance setbacks pursuant to the wetland permit issuance standards as set forth in section 325-9. Second, the subdivision map needs to be revised, and that's in order to identify all on-site wetlands as a wetland preservation area and the proposed wetland buffer as a 100 feet wide naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer. Said restricted areas need to be described by recorded covenant and or be encumbered by a conservation easement. And thirdly, prior to final map approval, draft conditions of approval need to be forwarded to the Conservation Board for review and evaluation pursuant to the requirements section 292-39B.
Move to send these comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? ZBA, Latoil Realty.
This is a pending application before the zoning board of appeals for a vacant piece of property on Elms Lane in the hamlet of North Sea, which had received conservation board approvals. The recommended advisory comments are as follows. As indicated by the applicant, the planned construction activities for which pyramid relief is being sought have already been authorized by the Conservation Board pursuant to wetland permit number CB 23010, which was issued on January 29, 2024. Second, the Conservation Board subsequently adopted a resolution of conditional approval on April 10, 2024, and that was in order to issue a modified wetland permit to allow for Suffolk County Department of Health Services required changes for the proposed IAOWTS, contingent upon providing a revised survey consistent with the comments reference various drawings. Thirdly, a survey is prepared by F. Michael Hammer, dated July 16, 2021, last revised April 18, 2024, was subsequently approved by the Conservation Board on April 24, 2024. And lastly, the survey is prepared by F. Michael Hammer with a final revision date of August 20, 2024, which was filed with the pending variance application, is consistent with the project plans approved by the Conservation Board.
Motion to send those comments to the zoning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The administrative wetland permits are in your packets. Resolution conditional approval, A 024026, Alex Demirhan, Demir RT.
Revocable trust.
Revocable trust. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit will be granted to Alex Demirhan, Demir Revocable Trust, 6/14/23, for the proposed project on the terms and conditions set forth herein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024029, George Vickers and Deborah Vickers, and this is postponed to December 18th, 2024.
Why?
We're waiting on a revised survey and revegetation plan.
Is there a motion to adjourn to?
So moved, December 18th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024064, Michael Polshuk and Marina Polshuk. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit will be granted to Michael Polshuk and Marina Polshuk for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth herein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review signature determination, A 024003, Mark Smith and Heather Cole.
There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated December 2nd, 2024. The application relates to an existing residentially developed property and abutting vacant parcel on the east side of West Piano Road in Hampton Bays. The application was initially filed in order to rectify unauthorized deer fences, an encroachment of the driveway onto the abutting town preserved land, as well as to construct some relatively minor first and second story additions, deck expansion and front entry. Upon review of the site history, I found that there were a host of improvements made at the property prior to the applicant's ownership that obtained building permits and COs, but the requisite wetland permits were never obtained. So the advisory report does include a detailed list of all of the other changes that were made to the property that need to be addressed. I have no issue with the legalization of those improvements, so long as the impacts are offset by establishment of a covenanted naturally vegetated buffer in the rear of the lot. The vacant flag lot where some fence modifications and drive removal need to occur contains an expansive area of freshwater wetlands immediately landward of Hidden Cove, which is part of Tiana Bay. So the recommended buffer would be established on the developed property in order to better enhance protection for the abutting wetlands. And this time, the applicant is amenable to preserving the remainder of that flag lot in its natural state. And many of the improvements that need to be legalized are far in excess of 100 feet or occurred within the pre-existing footprints of improvements that were completed prior to the effective date of the wetlands laws. And the buffer as recommended would be sufficient to offset wetland impacts. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, recommending that the public hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to chapter 325, section 325 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Just a comment, the next Conservation Board meeting is in fact on the 18th,
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay, at the end here, it says the 28th. The
Oh, it
typo.
does? Okay.
Not a big deal,
Yeah,
but
that's
I just,
wrong on the,
Yeah, I saw
I
that.
don't wanna,
on the agenda.
I don't wanna miss the 18th.
I will miss the 18th.
You will? Okay. You missed tonight too, Dan.
I know.
We could've used it.
I didn't expect to.
We could've used it.
I fell asleep out there.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.
That's just,